Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, back here with another Switch related tutorial, and in this video here, I'm going to be showing you all, if you have a modified Switch running Atmosphere custom firmware, how you can upgrade your microSD card, but also the main important thing here is bringing over your emuMMC partition or SD files setup. Now, in case you do not know, if you have a modified Switch, typically the standard is going to be, if you're in the modified side like I am here, you'd essentially have an emulated version of your system NAND that sits on the microSD card. You could either partition your microSD card, or you can have it set up as raw files on that microSD card. I have made a video before showing how you can upgrade your microSD card for your Switch, but that was really intended for stock systems. This here does require some extra steps because if you have that partition, there are a few extra steps you need to take here. So with that, you're going to need a few things. Of course, here we're going to need our modified Switch. You're also going to need a microSD card, of course, your current one, your new one that you want to upgrade to, and you will need a USB adapter so that you can adapt your microSD card to be on your PC so we can transfer files to, from, and back up everything that we need to. So with that all being said, what we're going to do here is I'll show you on my side. I am running the settings here. Let's go over to system. You can see that I'm currently running the latest Atmosphere, latest system firmware at the time of recording this. But if we go over to data management, currently I'm not using much of the emuMMC, but I do have 214 gigabytes free on my microSD card. I currently have a 400 gigabyte microSD card installed, and we're going to be upgrading to a 512 gigabyte for the purposes of this video here. So with the prerequisites stated and set up out the way, the first thing we're going to need to do is completely power off our Switch, because we need to determine what kind of setup we have. Once we turn off here, what you're going to need to do is boot up your system, but you're going to boot it up into Hecate. So whether you have a chip installed in your Switch or you're going to be using the RCM method, make sure you boot up your Switch into Hecate. When you boot up your system in a modified state, make sure you inject Hecate, and when you're over at Hecate, you're going to need to look at the main screen like you see right here, and then tap the option on the far right, which is emuMMC. Within the emuMMC section, look at the top left for emuMMC info and selection. It should show as enabled. Now you need to focus on type. It should be SD raw partition if it is like mine. And if it is SD raw partition, that means you're going to need to watch this whole video in order to accomplish this successfully. However, if it is a SD files setup, then you don't need to watch the entire video and you can skip ahead a little bit. You just need to go down to the timestamps down below in the description and go to the backup files section followed by the restore files section, because you're not going to need to mess with a partition. But again, if it shows SD raw partition, you will need to watch this whole video for this setup. I also did want to give a shout out and credit where credit is due to the NH Switch guide, which will be linked down below in the description. This is from Nintendo Homebrew, and this is the guide that I am using here. If you need a text-based setup, then feel free to reference this. However, this is really just going to be a video visual adaptation of the written guide right here. But again, a big shout out and thank you to them. Now with this determined here, if you are going to continue on with the SD raw partition, navigate over to the top right and tap close. Back at the main menu, you're going to want to look at the top of the screen and tap the tools option. From here, we need to begin the process of backing up our emuMMC. So you are going to need to make sure you have appropriate storage on your microSD card. If you have a standard Switch or a Switch Lite, you'll need at least 32 gigabytes of free space. If you have a Switch OLED, you're going to need at least 64 gigabytes of free space, so it would be worth to check your storage beforehand. Either way, we can now navigate over to Backup eMMC under Backup and Restore. Just tap that option. Now when you're at this screen here for backup, it's going to be focused for the system eMMC, which is not what we want to back up here. So on the bottom of the screen, in the middle of it, it's going to say SD emuMMC raw partition off. You're going to want to tap that to switch it to on. You should see that your options are going to change up a little bit, and that's good. You should now tap SD emuMMC boot 0 and boot 1. Tap that. It should just take a few seconds to complete this process. As you can see, mine didn't take all too long because these files are pretty small. So once that is done, you're going to want to tap the close option. Now, depending on the speed of your microSD card, this might take quite a bit of time. So at this point here, go ahead, take your switch, plug it into a charger, and then tap on SD emuMMC raw GPP. This step will take longer because it's going to back up your entire emuMMC partition. So again, this will take up either 32 or 64 gigabytes depending on your system. But all you need to do here is just wait. After enough time, mine took about 22 minutes, your emuMMC backup should be complete. So at this point you can hit close in the top right corner, close out of the backup menu, go back to the home menu, and from here tap power off, and you can fully power down the console. At this point you can now remove the micro SD card from the switch and hook it up into an adapter so you can use it on your PC. Now once you have it plugged in, I'm using a USB 3.0 adapter here, but it should look something like this where you see your switch micro SD card here, and as you can see all the contents are going to be here. Now when you copy out the files here, this is all you really need to do. On your desktop or somewhere you have enough storage, and it might be recommended to go here, right click, you can check the properties and see how much storage you're going to need. As you can see, I'm going to need 152 gigabytes worth of storage. So for this on my cache drive, I've actually made a Switch SD card backup folder, but wherever you are going to copy this here, you can go into your micro SD card, highlight all of the files and folders, right click, click on copy, go over to wherever you are saving this, and you can make a backup folder wherever it's going to be. Just something like that is fine. Whatever you're going to call it works out. Right click, paste, and now give it some time. Depending on how big your micro SD card is, how fast it is, and of course how much storage this has taken up, this could take quite a bit of time. You can see here this is going to take me about 45 minutes or so just give it some time to do the copy. Alright, so it took about an hour, but as you can see, all of the files are now sitting here in my backup directory on my computer here, and we have our old micro SD card right here. So at this point, we can now eject the micro SD card. Just go over to where it's at, right click, and eject this. Now plug in your new micro SD card and verify that it is showing up. As you can see, mine is under drive K. It is 461 gigabytes, even though it is a 512 gigabyte version. And as you can see, it has been already formatted from the factory to exFAT, but we are going to be changing that here. Now this here will be for people who want to continue to use the partition style setup, and if you're using the partition style, this is where you're going to need a couple of applications. First of all, you should be familiar with Hecate, but we're going to download the clean, vanilla, and latest build of Hecate. It will be linked down below in the description in case you do not have it, but you can just go over to the releases section on the GitHub repository, find the latest release here, scroll down, and download the latest zip file somewhere you can easily find it. The next download will be for FAT32 format or FAT32 format GUI or GUI format here. This will also be linked down below in the description, and you can just go ahead, click on download, and then go through the steps to download this and save it somewhere you can easily find it. So now that we have both of these downloaded here, let's go ahead and get this formatted properly. Now the reason why we're downloading GUI format is because if you have a large micro SD card such as this one here, it's not going to be as easy to do this from a drop-down menu, but we're going to resolve that here momentarily. Make sure you have your drive letter associated here, so this is going to be drive letter K in my example, and close out of any of your File Explorer windows. Next, grab the GUI format zip, right click, and you could extract it into its own folder or just extract it directly. Within here, we can now open this up, open up GUI format, and there's going to be two executables here. There's going to be the x86 version and the x64 version depending on your setup. Really, you can try the 64-bit version first, and if it doesn't work, use the 32-bit x86 version. But if you get a message like this, say yes, and you should get something like this here, where it's pretty simple. It has your drive letter, your allocation unit size, and your format label. We don't need to touch anything here, just verify this drive is for your micro SD card, quick format is okay, click on start. We can now close out of that File Explorer window, and it's going to say that all data will be lost. So as long as we understand that, hit OK, wait a few moments, and it has been formatted. So we can now close out of this. The next thing you want to do is grab your Hecate download, right click, and go ahead extract this into its own folder. Open up the Hecate folder, and there's going to be the payload bin file and the bootloader folder. Grab both of these, right click, and copy them. Now minimize this, go to your micro SD card, and paste them into the root of your micro SD card. Now, depending on your setup here, you might have to rename this. Really, you do need this here on your computer itself if you're going to be injecting this. So if you use a payload injector, you're going to want to update this. If you're going to use a payload injector program on your computer or on your phone, you're going to want to inject this here. Or if you're running a glitch chip, for example, mine is, I know I need to rename this to payload.bin. And once that's all completed, that should be the only thing here on our USB drive. So once that's done, we can right click our microSD card, eject, and pop it back over into the switch and turn it on. Go ahead, turn on your switch, inject the Hecate payload, and you should get a date and time set up right here. Just go ahead, set the date and time, and if it asks you to save your configuration, you're going to want to save that. It should save successfully, and now we can continue on with creating the SD card partition here. So from the home menu, you need to tap the Tools button on top. Tap on the Partition SD card option. It's going to give you the partition information right here. You can click on OK, so it will back up the files that are already on here, but there shouldn't be all too many. Now you're going to see the Partition Manager, and this is really all you need to do. You just need to focus on emuMMC raw. And there's really two options to care about. If you're using an original switch model, like the base model, or if you're using a switch lite, you're going to want to set that halfway through to 29 full. If you're using an OLED, you're going to want to move it all the way over to the right to 2x29. However, since I have a standard version of the switch, I'm just going to do 29 full, and then you're going to want to hit next step. It's going to give us a warning that this will partition the SD card, and it's going to back up and then restore our files. Once we are ready for this, you can hit start, and after a final safety warning, we should be able to continue on. After a few seconds of backing up our files, formatting, partitioning, and restoring our files, we should get a message saying done, which you can hit OK. You can then close out of the manager and go back over to Tools. So now go back to the home menu, power off your switch, unplug your micro SD card from your switch, and plug it back into your PC. If done correctly, when you come back over to your PC, you should notice that your SD card has been renamed to Switch SD, and it should also be missing several gigabytes right here. It's going to be one single partition, but you can see mine is now 432 gigabytes as opposed to what it was before. That means all of this has been done successfully. So now for restoring your backup, take your new micro SD card, make sure it is plugged into your PC, and once it is plugged in, find it on your File Explorer. You can right click, check the properties, and make sure the file system is FAT32. If it is FAT32, you are all good to continue. However, if it is not FAT32, if it is exFAT, we are going to need to format this accordingly. If you've just set up the partition, you should be fine. However, if you are not, for example, if you're using the SD files setup, just go ahead and grab GUI format. You can right click this and extract it into its own folder. Once it's been extracted, open up the folder, go into GUI format x86, x64, and launch one of these here. Now this is going to be the 64-bit version, this is going to be the 32-bit version. Really, just launch the 64-bit version, say yes here, and if this ends up working, you can continue. If it does not work, you can use the 32-bit version. But what we should do is close out of this, make note of which drive letter your micro SD card is, and then close out of the File Explorer windows here. If this needs to be formatted, select your drive for your micro SD card, select the allocation size here, the default should be fine, and then give it whichever label you want to. Switch SD is fine. You can click on Quick Format, and then you can continue on here. Mine has already been formatted to FAT32, so I do not need to do this, but if yours is set to exFAT or NTFS, for example, you will want to format this to FAT32, so you just click on OK and continue on with this. However, with that all sorted, and again we can verify that this is now FAT32, we should be able to copy our files back over. So in order to restore everything here, it is thankfully pretty simple. Just go into your micro SD card, and if you've done the partitioning, you should see the bootloader and maybe a payload.bin right here. We can go ahead and remove these if we want to, because we're just going to copy over what we already have from our existing setup. But go over here to your SD card backup, wherever you might have backed it up to, highlight all of the files here and folders, right click, copy, close out of this, go over to your micro SD card, right click and paste. Now this is going to take some time to transfer back over, so just go ahead and give it a bit. As you can see here, this is going to take maybe about 30-40 something minutes, but I'm going to round up to about an hour. So let's just go ahead and give it some time. Alright, so as you can see, it's taken quite a bit of time here, but about an hour later, we are almost done at this point. So once this is all copied over, you should be good to go, and your files should be all restored back to what they were, but you have the added benefit of having some extra storage space, unless you end up going with the same size or even a lower size MicroSD card. Now at this point here, if you are using your SD file setup, you should be all good to go at this point. Everything should be copied over just fine, and you shouldn't have to worry about much else. However, that is not what we're doing if we're going to be using a partition setup. If you're using a partition setup, you're going to have to take a few more steps here. Navigate into the backup directory, navigate into this directory, which will be a series of numbers and letters, and inside of here you might see several different files and folders right here. I will tell you, if you're seeing all these raw NAND and the boot 0 and boot 1 outside of this, that means that this is for your system MMC, so your stock onboard eMMC, your stock system itself. This one we're not going to touch, but inside of emuMMC, this is where the backup was, and we're going to have to move this folder right here. So go into your emuMMC folder, highlight all of these files right here, right click, cut. Now go back into this folder, go into the restore folder, go into emuMMC, and paste them right here. And there we go, that's exactly what we need. So with that all done, we have that moved over, but everything else should be as is. Now with all that properly in place, we can come back out here, right click our microSD card, eject it, now pop it into your switch and turn it on, and make sure you're injecting that Hecate payload. We should now at this point be back over at the Hecate menu, which you should be more than familiar with, but you need to go to the top option, which will be Tools. This time around, we're going to tap on Restore eMMC for the first time. Now inside of this, there's going to be an option on the bottom for SD emuMMC raw partition that is by default set to off. You're going to want to tap that to enable it, and your options should now change. So let's tap the first option on the left for SD emuMMC boot 0 and boot 1. This will take boot 0 and boot 1 and restore them to your emuMMC. Once that's completed, you can close out of there, and this time around you're going to select SD emuMMC raw GPP. Again, this process is going to take a good amount of time, so I would recommend taking your switch, hooking it up to a charger, and then just wait until this process is complete. Once the emuMMC raw GPP restoration has completed, you can go ahead and close out of it, close out of that menu yet again. At this point, you can now go home and tap on the far right option for emuMMC. And if you look now on your new microSD card, it should show as enabled for SD raw partition, which is exactly what we are trying to do. So at this point here, you can now close out of this, go into the launch option, and make sure you can launch Atmosphere custom firmware from here. So as you can see at this point here, I've been able to reconnect, and it looks similar to what we were seeing at the beginning of the video, which is great. I do know I have a custom theme on here, and that is running on my emuMMC partition, so I do know that this is not running on my sysMMC. So we can come over here, go to settings, and if I check out data management, as you can see, after doing all the transfers and such, you can look at the microSD card, and I have more free space than normal. Now, one last thing on here, if you want to free up a little more space, I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. For that here, we will need to access the microSD card one more time, so you can use whatever method you want to on here, but I'm just still going to go with the tried and true method of turning off the switch completely, removing the microSD card, and popping it into the computer. Plug in your microSD card, and if you come over here, go into the backup directory, into our folder for our specific console. Right over here, we no longer need the restore option, so if you go into restore and emuMMC, since this has been restored, we can now get rid of this backup here if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that here. Now if we go a few folders back into, again, the backup folder and this folder here, I would not recommend moving out this NAND dump here, which is just sitting in here, because again, this one is for our sysMMC. That way, if anything goes wrong with our actual console itself, with the onboard flash storage, we can always restore this. But since this one is the emuMMC, worst case, we can always regenerate that. But since we've restored our backup and transferred it over, we should be all good. And check this out, we've been able to reclaim even more storage space, which is even better. So we can now right click and eject a MicroSD card and now use it on our Switch and fully enjoy it. Oh, and on your actual PC itself, go over to your backup folder where you copied over everything here, and if you are comfortable with deleting this, you can delete this as well too, because once we delete this here, check this out, that is going to free up about 150 gigabytes worth of storage space. So you can also delete that backup that you've made once all the files have been transferred over successfully. So here we go. At the end, it's a little bit more involved than you would expect here. However, we were able to get that all done. We have all of our games, all of our applications transferred over, we have more storage space, and more importantly, we still have our emuMMC working, operational, and fully transferred over. So we should be all good to go at this point. So you can now hopefully enjoy even more storage space on your modified Switch. Anyways, that is about it for this video here. If you enjoyed it, a like would absolutely be appreciated. And if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone.